Welcome to the official Tennis.com podcast featuring professional coach and community leader, Kamau Murray.
Welcome to the Tennis.com podcast. I'm your host, Kamau Murray, and we got my brother here who we've traveled to 3-4 different continents, 20 different countries, spent 30 weeks together on the road. One of the guys I used to see in the bar, now I don't. I see him in the lobby with his laptop all the time. He's a big wig over at UTR now, which is sort of reshaping the way tennis is thought of and played at every level. His name is Stephen Amritraj. Let's welcome him to the show.
Thanks, Kamau. I appreciate that. That is quite the intro. I have been spending significantly more time on my laptop these days. So yes, that's correct.
Dude, I used to see you on the court, maybe dropping an F-bomb here and there. Now I see you sitting in some corner looking for some Wi-Fi, trying to have a Zoom call with somebody that's 3 a.m. on the U.S. state. So tell us about your ascent into tennis and sort of how you got to where you are now. Because I look at sort of, my journey in tennis, and I'm probably somewhere I shouldn't be, never thought I would be, dibbling, dabbling in different realms, but you're doing it on a whole nother level.
Well, I appreciate that. I think we all have our own journey, and, there's steps along the way where each of us has gotten to where we've gotten. I think, I played juniors. I went to Duke for college tennis. I played a little bit of doubles on the tour. I had some knee injuries pretty early. And then I kind of went into coaching really early. As soon as I was done, Rajiv Ram, who's my best friend, and my cousin Prakash, when they're kind of challenger level players, said, "Hey, look, I think you'd always be good at this. Do you want to try it out for a little bit?" And, it was a little sad. I still had a competitive fire, but I just was not healthy enough to kind of keep going myself. So that was kind of a little bit of a sad point for me, where I was like, okay, well, maybe I would be okay at this. And so I started coaching them. Rajiv won Newport, the ATP title, within 6 months. So we were kind of moving in the right direction. But it was really starting from kind of that bottom, as a coach and as someone who was working with challenger level players, not even top 100 players at the time until you earn it. I got burned out a little bit, and then, ended up kind of doing a stint with Fish, with Marty, coaching him, or really kind of being an assistant coach to kind of the program that they had. He was top 10 at the time, and I just learned so much from him. So, that was kind of my initiation into kind of top level tennis. I then kind of worked for the USTA as a national coach, mostly for the men's program in Carson, and then kind of oversaw the collegiate program for the USTA before joining on as an executive at Universal Tennis, formerly UTR. The one thing I'm really proud of is I don't feel like I skipped any steps. Started from the bottom, started at $600 a week, coaching these guys, and kind of grinding it out from really, really, truly the bottom. And it was everything that I needed to learn and observe. It was like a doctorate in tennis. So I'm really proud of my journey with that, because there was no shortcuts taken.
But your bottom is different than most people's bottom, because have some tennis lineage, right? Vijay Amritraj is a relative of yours. So
correct.
Mine was the bottom. Mine is 72nd and Jeffrey, tennis racket from Walmart, trying to hide my tennis racket in the garbage can behind my house so my friends didn't see me walking to and from bus. Yours was my brother's Vijay Armitage. So you got it's in your blood.
Look, I hear you. And I have been incredibly lucky at, the kind of starting point that my family put me in. But, I do believe that there's an element of earning the process yourself. So yeah, it's different for everyone, and kind of for my professionalism and for my kind of starting point as a coach, and then kind of, working into an administrator and executive. I'm proud to say that my journey has been what I feel, I'm something that I'm really proud of. And, it's not been something where I believe that, kind of a starting point has got me there, but it's something that I've tried to learn and earn myself.
Now, your cousin Prakash is famous for his muscles.
And he is.
And I always see him working out, but you are kind of like me. My version of workout is working out my fingers on my laptop. I don't see you in the gym. How did you all get on totally different paths like that?
Well, look, I think it's I mean, the two things that Prakash and I have in common is just a very strong competitive drive. My competitive drive is really around kind of where I feel like I can add value to, the business end of the sport, to the company that I've, committed my career to my wife, who I feel like, Alison, who I feel like, I want to try to be helpful to and kind of there for whenever we need. And then kind of last, after all of that, like if there's some time left in the day and some energy left, like, we'll do certain, kind of stuff that, is physical or kind of on myself. But I look at this as, I'm a giving guy. I feel like I'm a pretty selfless guy. And the energy that I have is usually dedicated to that. I mean, Prakash has a brand that is, very visible, and I think it's pretty incredible, actually, because the one thing about him, and the one thing that I wake up kind of inspired by each day, is his dedication and his discipline and his commitment. Obviously, I think everyone is going to have that in different degrees and kind of different, just paths for that. And so I know, and it's very easy to see, and it's very easy to get a motivating text message from him each day. Like, I mean, I know that he's going for it, and, for someone as close to me as that, it makes me want to do the same.
So you mentioned Alison. So you're the husband of Alison Riske, and I always talk to John Lloyd and give him all the time, because I say, I mean, the dude was a professional tennis player, a British legend, and he was known as Chris Everett's husband, right? Or Chris Everett's ex-husband. How do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, look, like, I think that I'm incredibly proud of Allie. I mean, and there's definitely going to be some people who think of me as her husband. I think of myself as my own person. And, I think that I've achieved enough kind of in this right now, in the sport and in the ecosystem that we live in, to, be known as Stephen Amritraj, and kind of proud of what I've done. For her, I'm her biggest fan, and I always will be. And, I want to see her do great and to the best of her ability each day. And if there's a situation where I need to kind of be helpful or put her in front of me or do whatever I can to making her be in the best position to succeed, I'm definitely going to try to be helpful there.
So I primarily coach women, right? I actually prefer, I feel like girls process stuff like quicker. You got to say it a little more sensitively, right? And sometimes you got to take the back door, where guys, you could like be like a little more direct. You go right at them. So you've obviously coached a lot of men at the collegiate level as well as on tour. You've coached one woman that I know. Tell me the difference between coaching men and women.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that is right. It seems to be, way more of a, I mean, I think in general, you can be a little bit more straightforward with the guys. But quite honestly, like, I think that regardless of the gender of the player, they want the truth, and they want the honesty that, someone is going to give them in terms of how they're going to be the best player that they can be. And so, they're all competitors. They're in the top 0.0001% of what they do in the world. And you're just talking about, I mean, just razor thin margins on whether you're going to be winning or losing, and whether you're going to be top 10, top 20, top 50, top 100. And, I think the interesting thing on that, Kamau, is like, they're earning their job every week, and they're kind of on the firing line each week, so whether they're trying to make a cut for a bigger event, or whether they're trying to make, top 100 to be able to kind of make the Grand Slams, or whether they're able to be 9 versus 8 and making, the World Tour finals, like, those are big kind of like, margins that are just kind of like right there, that can basically make a career and kind of not make a career. And so they want the truth. They want things said to them. I mean, that's going to make them better. At least I've found the people that I've worked with to be very coachable. And I try to give that to them. I think that the key as a coach is trying to find out the best way to say the same things, over and over again, depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, the difference I found is when to say it, right? I think they all want the truth, It's just picking your spots on when is the right time to either address it, whether it's immediately after the match, 30 minutes after, or even over dinner, or even the next day, right? When they're willing to receive it. And I think when I look at, like, from my coaching career, coaching multiple players, when we weren't successful, I didn't poke the bear. And what I would say to, like, a young coach is always poke the bear, right? Because at a certain level, you figure, you feel like, okay, this player's 3 in the world. They're probably a better tennis player than I ever was.
Sure.
Doesn't look as sharp right now, but in the next hour and a half, they'll work it out, right?
Sure.
Or when they get on the court, it'll work itself out. And then you find, like, it doesn't, right? Or it didn't. Or, damn, I wish I would have said that. Do you find that to sort of be the case as well?
I mean, look, I think for young coaches out there, you need to find your voice. You need to earn your trust before you say anything. But look, for me, and this is what I believe, like, whether it's, working with players or working with, people in our company, whatever it is, like, I don't want to leave anything unsaid. And the fact that if we feel like as a group and as, something that I believe in strongly, that it's going to make people better. I think that that's the key point. I mean, whether that's poking the bear or not, like, I think we're all here to try to improve, myself included. And I'm willing to take advice from anyone to do that. And I think that they're willing. I mean, the people that I want to surround myself with are willing to be open-minded enough for that and have a growth mindset with it. So, I wouldn't leave anything unsaid, especially if you feel like it's going to leave someone better than what you found them. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with that anymore.
So you left the USTA.
Yep.
Went to work for Universal Tennis.
Yep.
And at the time it was new. And I would say when UTR, formerly UTR, now Universal Tennis, came out, what excited me about it was this. When you look at sort of the ranking system and the point system, right? I remember I was coaching, like, 3 or 4 girls, all of them were top 50 in the country, right? None of them had won a tournament in over 2 years. But they were able to play a lot of tournaments, quarters of a lot, round of 16 of a lot, and be top 50 in the country, right? Because you could basically accumulate and buy a lot of points, right? If you can afford to travel, boom, your ranking is going to, like, incrementally go up. And in the space that I work in, working with minority players or people who are late starters to the game or
Sure.
don't have the money to travel, what excited me about UTR was that I could get judged on the quality of the matches,
Yep.
right? If somebody happens to fly to Chicago and play a tournament, I could basically eat off their ranking, right? Or their rating without having to spend money to go fly to Easter Bowl or whatever it is like that. And so I don't know if that was the impetus behind it, but it did sort of level the playing field versus quality over quantity. I do think UTR is still a mystery to some people. They're still trying to figure out the algorithm, how to manipulate it. Can you give us, like, back of the envelope crash course on UTR?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, first of all, I'm really happy that you've had that experience with it, because that is what it's intended to do. It's intended to basically give everyone an indication of their level by the competitiveness of how they play against who they play, right? Rankings are flawed for a variety of reasons. They have people, their places are geographically kind of more in line with having more points. So by example, if you take it to the ATP level, like, there's something like 60 to 70% of the tournaments that are on the ATP tour, especially in the pathway, are in Europe. So, like, you have also corresponding 60% of the professionals who are in the top 100 from Europe, right? You may have areas like Minnesota that do not have very many, tournaments, that players from there are going to suffer because of a lack of ranking points as opposed to a Florida or Southern California. So I think what UTR does, and the rating that that I love and that I believe in wholeheartedly, is, really a few things. Number one, like, those people who are looking at it to try to manipulate it, like, I hear you. That was the first thing that I did as, kind of director of college tennis at the USTA. I basically went to all these colleges and had them privately finance, futures and challengers, because we needed more points on American soil versus Europe. And with that, we were able to get so many more collegiate players through. So, like, believe me, I'm the first person who looks at it and is like, okay, like, how can we structure this to the situation where, where we give our players advantages? the issue is with UTR is that you can't really game it. It's just so incredibly good in terms of who you play, what the score was. And, when you look at it from a zoomed out perspective, you're able to have every match that you play count for your rating. It's not going to matter whether you play an ITF tournament or, a future or a juniors or, kind of a sectional tournament or, a national level L2, and you have all these points, but the point from the L2 doesn't go into juniors, and junior ITFs don't go into pro ITF. Like, the fragmented nature of tennis is an absolute, is just chaos, really, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing that I've always felt with UTR, the rating, that's really awesome is every time you step on the court, whether it's for a high school match, whether it's for a UTR match play, whether it's for, a USTA L2 or sectional tournament or ITF, whatever, that's all aggregated together to give you the best indication of your level. So for me, like, I'm just a huge proponent of that, not only because you're able to have every match count, but you're also able to see where you are kind of across this continuum of tennis. And so just as a last item, because it's relevant to the Universal Tennis Herd Awards, which gives $100,000 to college players coming out of school. The first time that I really saw this was when I was working in Carson with USTA, and Mackie McDonald used to come down from UCLA and hit with Stevie Johnson and Sam Querrey, who were both top 50 at the time, and Austin Krychek, who I was working with, who was about like 120. And like, we were able to see that Mackie was pretty close to a top 100 level player. And, just on his college results, he's number one in college, but he's 900 on the tour. Like, where does this guy fit? And that's where I really got to know UTR was, hey, UTR had him at the time at about 100 in the world, which is exactly where I thought he was. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So, it just gives an objective understanding of the player's level in a fairly murky world of understanding kind of, where you are with rankings that can be manipulated.
So, the algorithm is very complex,
Yep.
right? Which it has to be complex to work. And one of the things that I learned early on is that, in junior parents, they always want their kids to play up, right?
Sure.
And as a coach, even at this level, we talk about like the small, minute difference between being 25 in the world and 6 in the world.
Yep.
Literally, right? I coached a player and was probably one bad line call on the left sideline away from number one on clay, right?
Yeah.
And so what I always tell parents is play your level, right? Play people who are your level so you actually learn how to win.
Yep.
Playing up against somebody and getting your brains beat in doesn't necessarily benefit you, because I think people inherently know how to fight.
Yep.
Right. But playing somebody that's like, close to your level and learn how to think and win close matches it's a better benefit long-term to your development. So now, if you play somebody that's 2 points higher or lower than you in your UTR rating, the match doesn't count. What's the logic behind that?
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, so there's two parts of that I want to comment on. So starting with the 2.0, kind of, I don't want to call it a rule, but like some kind of the 2.0 situation. We have so much data in our system that shows that when a result, there's so little chance of a win or even kind of a competitive match at that level. And we define competitive match as somewhere about a closer match than 6-4, 6-4. We have so little results that make sense on that we actually don't count anything over a 2.0 level. However, if someone within that time gets to be within a 2.0 level of the person that they played, we store the result, and that result is actually able to come on, whether positive or detrimental, to the player. So like, we have it, we just are saying we have better indications of your level than if, by example, and you're in women's tennis, like a 2.0 difference would be the player who's 350 in the world playing Ash Barty, who's number one. Mm-hmm. So like the 2.0 difference would be someone who's number one in college playing Novak Djokovic. So like,
let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, if I played somebody, if a kid played somebody that's 2.0 higher than them, yep. Okay, that match is still stored in your data. Once the kid that lost, obviously, to the player, or the lower kid comes within a point, then that match will now fall into their sort of database?
Yes,
Because
within their last 30.
Okay, got it.
Within their
Even if
last
it was-
30. I mean, even if it's 1.9 or 1.99, that will come onto the system. Now,
when does that expire though? Is it like a 2-year time limit? Is it
no,
1 year?
if it's within their last 30 matches, as
Got
the
it.
entire UTR algorithm takes only your last 30 matches over
Got
a 15-month period, right? However, what I would say is that in that match, if he or she loses badly, that also counts.
Right.
So like that's the kind of like it's not a one-way street when you're playing people higher than you, and like there is this intention of like, oh, we should play someone higher than that. That's not true. Actually, the fastest way to improve your UTR is actually the hardest way to improve your UTR, which is, you alluded to it. You want to play players at your level and you want to beat them pretty decisively to the point where you're proving you're actually not at that level consistently over and over again.
Right.
So we've seen people make pretty big runs in the highest levels of UTR when they're basically going through, multiple tournaments and winning straight set match after straight set match after straight set match, probably at their level, not so much that they're beating, whatever, Daniil Medvedev 3-3-3. That's
right.
not going to happen.
Because he's probably tanked, right?
I think that's kind of one of the misconceptions. And the only other thing I'd say to parents is exactly what you mentioned. Like, try to just zoom out a little bit and understand that the rating is best used when you're not looking at every 0.01 up and 1 down. You're looking at it over a 2-3 month period. You're seeing that there's improvement. It's gradual over time because it's never that fast. And the fact that if you work and you compete and you continue to focus on becoming a better player, your rating will correlate to that.
Well, I equate it to this, right? So, I look at like pro tennis, and number one, they take your highest, your best 16 results, right? And your ranking is primarily comprised about that. That's number one. Number two, time on court, right? So if you are 25 in the world and you are on the court with somebody that qualied and they're 170 in the world, and you're 7.5 in the third, there should be a negative impact to your UTR based on you not winning 2-2 like you should have. Because in real life, there's negative impact to your body. If that's a first round match and you're 7.5 in the third with somebody 170 in the world, you're on the court probably an hour and a half longer, which is going to hurt you for the next round. The hour and a half longer on court also puts you at risk for getting injured in that time frame, which could have a longer impact, right? A more negative impact on your career long term. And so beating people you're supposed to beat and the manner you're supposed to beat them is a skill that should be encouraged, rewarded, and or penalized, right, at a younger age. Because let's say you do make it in college, let's say you do make it on tour, the impact of not beating somebody you're supposed to beat, how you're supposed to beat them, could have career-ending injuries, right? So I look at like someone like Francis Tiafoe, who I love to death. He's somebody I would say that every now and then might have a mental lapse and ends up on court an extra set than he should be, right? And the impact of that, thank God, has not been, but could be dangerous from that extra hour and a half on court.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I can speak at it from the UTR and the rating level, like, and just kind of the what would happen there. And like in the example you used, like, if you're close with someone who's 170 and they're actually the 170th best player in the world, the indication, just again zooming out and taking a step back, is like, look, like, you're probably not playing up to your standard as whatever the 10th best player in the world or whatever you wanted to use in that example, right? Like, if you're playing close with the number 170, there's usually probably one of two things that are happening. Number one, the person who's 170 is probably way better than 170 because they're right. Or two, your level is on the day probably not as good as number 10 in the world or whatever it may be, right? And I think that concept is what UTR tries to put a kind of gauge on. And you will get an understanding of your level, probably best in the world, because we're able to unify all the, kind of results and systems that are out there on one standard. But that is kind of like the concept of it. And yeah, it makes you perform to the best of your ability each day, which, kind of as a challenge and as a competitor, I think is something that a lot of people should want to do.
But it also speaks to the other thing that UTR measures, which is the trend, right? So that person that's 170 could be playing better over the
100%.
last 90 days. And the person that's 20, 25, who's got 12, 52 weeks of points that haven't fallen off,
Yep.
could be playing worse, right? And so like the trend, right, also could,
I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, in general, I would say when I look at the ratings, especially at the professional level, and you can tell me what your thoughts are, but I feel like we're usually about 4 to 5 months ahead of the rankings in both spaces. And like it's been more evident lately because like the rankings have been skewed over what tournaments played or what tournaments didn't, and kind of longer than a 12-month period. But like there have been multiple examples like where Jenny Brady was trending in our top 10 before she, kind of made semis of the US Open and finals of the AO. I mean, we've had Danielle Collins really close to top 10 for the last 4 months. She just made finals of the AO and kind of got there. Another one is Carlos Alcaraz. I think we have like 5 or 6 right now currently, and like obviously he's a little bit behind that, but you're seeing his level and you're like, wow, like the guy's pretty special, so I think that that's where those things is kind of like where, I mean, another one's Jensen Brooksby. We've had him at pretty close to like 15 for a little bit, probably like 2-3 months. He's not there yet, but I think that there's a belief that his level is going to get him there. And if his wins over Tsitsipas this week and kind of like where we feel like, hey, this is a tight match against Norrie, who's 11 in the world, like, I think that over time those results will play out with the indication of level that UTR gives people.
So we run a lot of junior tournaments at our academy, probably 38 to 40.
Nice. I like it.
Oh man. What we see a lot is people will lose in the front draw.
Sure.
Right. Pull out of the back draw in an attempt to maybe avoid a bad loss. I call it match ducking, right? Duck a match or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
What is UTR doing anything? And ultimately, from a coaching standpoint, I'm looking at, a 14-year-old, they need a lot of matches, right?
Sure.
I look at like, being a good student is you show up in group, you got a great coach, you take private lessons, all other kind of stuff. And then matches to me is like test prep, taking the ACT, right? The Kaplan courses. And so when I see people duck matches, I'm like, no, dude, you're 15. What you need is more matches, right? Because that's the job, is to learn how to like compete and win a match. So is UTR doing anything to try to discourage or punish ducking matches?
Yeah. So, I mean, great question. First of all, it's probably about a 2%. So 2 out of every 100 matches from the data that we've gotten shows that there's a default in some way. Now, they're actually crazily split 50-50 between main draw and back draw. And they're split 50-50 between higher rated UTR and lower rated UTR. So it's kind of nuts because like we hear a lot of anecdotal stuff about people pulling out of the back draw, and like there could be a lot with that. There could be the fact that people just don't want to play in the back draw. There could be the fact that people don't want to hang around anymore. There's all kinds of those things. What we do is we actually flag the number of withdrawals at the top of someone's results. So like it will show, hey, look, this pro player has whatever, like 1 withdrawal in their last 30 matches or whatever it is, or they're above 2 or 3, I would start being like, wow, that's probably something that's a little bit of a habit. But as a coach, and Kamau, I throw it back to you a little bit, like, I mean, like I think that we need to kind of help educate coaches and help educate parents that like, look, like matches are what's needed, especially at 14 years old. You need to go out there and try to learn how to compete and learn how to win. And I mean, I would also question the the culture from the coach and kind of the support team around each of these players that's going to be like, yeah, it's a good idea, like don't do that.
When I see that player's not going to make it because
so like, I mean, it's kind of, I think that is really the question that we should be having, like why are players being allowed to do that if they are, and I think that we have an understanding that the number is probably not as high as people think it is, but it's just so glaring. And I think it kind of is irritating to, people who are in coaching or people who, work hard to put on tournaments when that does happen. And, I would just really kind of, ask the coaches and parents, like, look, like, is that what you want to really teach your kids? Because those lessons there are going to be kind of kept and stay with you. And I think one of the best and most challenging things about tennis is the ability to go out there and earn it every day. And if like you're playing someone who is not of your level, showing up, doing your job, taking care of business, that's a skill that's gonna, translate and be with you for the rest of your life, whether you're playing tennis or whether you're obviously gonna, move on to other things.
Yeah. So when I think about like coaching at tour level, like I think that, players don't change, right? They become more of themselves. And when I look at juniors, right, and I look at sort of like, if you look at the American juniors that are world ranked, winning junior slams, it's lower than the rest of the world, right? And I think at this level, there's an element of toughness that is missing or is not being taught. And so when I see a player duck a match or not be encouraged to play the match, I would never coach that player, because even if you can hit the ball and you can move, if you ain't tough, you ain't gonna make it, right? And when we have juniors, that's what we're shaping them, right? That's what we're teaching them. When they get 25 and you've allowed them to duck matches and be soft and pull out and all this other kind of cheat and that kind of stuff, you're not gonna reshape them at 25, right? They're just gonna like blow up into this real tennis monster that you allowed them to become at 14. And so I think it's hurting the toughness of our sport. And I'm sure you would agree, when you start competing globally or you have aspirations to compete globally, everybody can hit the ball, everybody can move. Can you fight, right? And can you do it at 5 all dudes? And I see that this behavior is going to say, no, they can't do it, right? And I wouldn't want them on my team in college.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, look, like, and that's it. And like, that's why we flag it, because college coaches have said to us, we want to know kind of like what the character of these players are before we start recruiting. And, I mean, they're very grateful for having this kind of information. Look, Kamau, like, I'd agree with you, man. Like, in general, like, tennis is such an incredible metaphor for life. And I think that's where people who have played the sport really kind of value, when they look back on it, what they learned in juniors. Like, yeah, the ability to kind of go out there and be tough and like learn toughness and learn how to fight and learn how to problem solve and learn how to do those things is really kind of what it's all about at that level. I mean, you and I both can probably chuckle looking at the 14-year-old right now. Like, this is an incredibly long journey. They're probably, I mean, if they're going to get really good at tennis, they're probably not even halfway through kind of where they would want to be with their tennis life at 14 years old, So like, take a step back, focus on improvement, focus on getting better each day. Know that this is an incredibly long process, and try to make the right decisions for the overall improvement of your game. I mean, that would be the kind of mantra that I would give to players that are of a young age and kind of really focused. I mean, I was too, really focused on like the next day, the next result, the next kind of like tournament that they're playing. Just try to take a step back, look at the big picture, improve every day, enjoy the process, and really have fun with what you're doing.
So you mentioned that college coaches will come to you all, giving you feedback. I think one of the things that tennis in general struggles with is we're not a nimble sport, right? We got Grand Slam Committee, WTA, ATP, NCAA, ITA, ITF, Fed Cup, all this other kind of thing, right? But UTR, Universal Tennis, has seemed to be almost like a tennis tech startup, right? Where you can open to new ideas and are very nimble. An example of that is what you guys did during the pandemic. Tell me sort of like what you all are doing to move forward, right? I just heard that there was an Amazon deal. Like, you guys are always have new, like, sort of shit that's coming up. Tell me, like, what y'all moving? I know your fingers be tapping away. I'm like, yeah, bro, Allie's practicing over there. And you like, yeah, I'm on his own. You know what I mean? Like, those fingers are tapping away. Tell me where you're moving next.
Well, I mean, look, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I appreciate the compliment on us being nimble. We have an incredibly hardworking team. And yeah, we are a tennis technology company. We're not necessarily, married to tradition. We feel like, tradition absolutely has a incredible place in the sport, but, we're going to try to improve it however we can. So a lot of the products that we've come out with have attempted to do just that. So whether they're, the rating itself to start out to aggregate everyone in the world on the best indication of their level, whether it's the ability like you to run tournaments, and give people a local affordable option at more match play through events at their facility. We've decentralized the ability to do that and allowed kind of more people to play. We've put together these amazing things called flex leagues, where basically you have a 3-match aggregation of almost like a decentralized ability for you and me, if we're the same level, to play over a 4-week period with people in your area. So now I think we're in about like 70 markets globally on that. And it just offers incredible flexibility in terms of people playing tennis. Think of it like, instead of having to play a Saturday and Sunday tournament, you're able to schedule a match at a time and place that you guys both agree on. And I think that this is more for the recreational adult market, but can be used for really anyone. And then I think as well, but we've come out with a 25K tour that has had 185 tournaments in 15 countries last year, and led to this awesome partnership with Amazon. All those matches starting in kind of middle of this year, Q2 and beyond, is going to be on Amazon Prime, which is something that we're really excited about. I mean, the ability to kind of work with the company that is probably the biggest company in the world, and bring them into tennis and have them kind of believe in what we're doing is just an incredible validation for our team. So I appreciate what you said about the pandemic. We worked hard. I think that the entire sport had to pivot, and from our end, like, this is just the beginning. We're going to continue to look for solutions like a technology company should, in tennis, and really try to kind of continue to make people's experiences and just overall life better when they play the sport and more enjoyable.
Yeah, so we held tournaments in Chicago this summer, and the hospitality portion of it definitely presents a challenge. You got to, guarantee them 5 nights. You got to transport them to and from. You got to feed them on site, player plus 2, player, all that other kind of stuff. So, I do see that. Tell me about like the difference between, let's say, WTA model, right, USTA 80K Challenger model versus the UTR Pro Tournament model, and what it would allow a smaller organization to run an event without all the sort of mandatory hospitality, et cetera.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, that's what we did. We kind of took a look at kind of the standards for, the levels of 25K tournaments that are out there, met the ones that we feel like were critical, i.e. referee levels, and, having, basic standards around kind of just stuff for the players, player lounge, and just balls and practice courts and lights and all those things. But we stripped down the other options that like really cause stress on both an organizer and a player. What we did was we created a format where there's a round robin, so you're going to have guaranteed matches per week, in the WTA or ATP or ITF, like pretty much any level of tennis. Like, you can go and get a bad draw first round and get knocked out and lose 7-6 in the third, and then have this cost incurred to you where you're paying for a hotel room each night before you're able to get to the next week. So, in our system, we have 3 round robin matches where if you kind of win your group or kind of come in second or wherever you place, like, you then go into the quarterfinals and beyond based on whoever else won their group. So look, that guaranteed matches has, the ability, as you mentioned, for players that are developing to continue to develop by getting more competitive opportunities. And we've seen, incredible feedback. I think we're, something like 95% plus of players that have played in our tournaments play again. And they also say like how much they enjoy that kind of format. So basically, you're able to get more matches in 1 week. You're able to do it in a place, like, we like to try to have 2 in a row in the same city. That way, thinking, and invoking new technology. Hey, look, you're going to go to a place, you're going to try to get an Airbnb for 14 days. You're not going to incur kind of, a daily rate on a hotel. You're able to kind of do this in bulk. You're able to hopefully have many matches. You're able to, go there and get what we feel like is pretty good money. It's the best money kind of at that level from a 25K perspective. And, you're able to do that. You're able to compete, get better, and then, kind of continue to improve. So, I mean, this has all been done with kind of a technological focus. The other thing is that every single one of these matches are streamed. And so they were on YouTube, but now they're going to move to Amazon Prime. So that's something where, I mean, how it is. If you're a developing player, you're trying to bring a coach with you, but if you're making, $200 a week, that's impossible, financially. So now here you have the ability to have your coach like watch you on stream, give you thoughts, give you advice, give you kind of concepts, have you yourself as a player learn, without incurring a cost that, you know, is obviously going to be a fee per week, hotel and expenses and all these other things that make the sport really difficult financially for players of that level. So, you know, out of all the things that I've done, like this and working with our team to try to create this has been one of the things that I'm most proud of, because I think that it's really going to be able to help a lot of people in their development and in their journey to try to achieve their dreams of being a professional tennis player.
The other thing that I think, you know, last year we looked at doing it, and I think having it on Amazon Prime answers the question that a tour or a tournament organizer would need to a sponsor to say, where's it going to be televised or streamed? How many people are going to watch it? How many people are going to see my logo? And so I think being able to answer that question is a step forward for that model as well. Because there are still costs, right? Fucking balls and cleanup and 100%. Security and.
No, I mean, look, you're right. I think that, you know, we're elevating the standard of 25K tournaments by having every single one of them on Amazon Prime, like full stop, you know, and the fact that we're able to do that and, you know, have it be kind of in partnership with, as I mentioned, you know, one of the biggest streaming platforms in the world is something that we're incredibly excited about. And I think that the sport should be, you know, really fired up about.
So I got two more questions. You've been on here a long time. How did you choose Duke? I know, you know, like Tommy Paul always tells the joke about how he wanted to go to North Carolina, but they wouldn't give him a full scholarship. Right? And so how did you choose Duke, and what would have been your second choice?
Well, it's really funny. I mean, my mom, who means a lot to me and passed away about a year ago this time, wanted me to get a great education out of going to, you know, wherever I was going to choose for college. So I was kind of very academically focused, and you know, I was a pretty good tennis player. I'd say that I was probably top 10 in my recruiting class. I wouldn't say that I was the best, but I definitely was, you know, had the interest of some schools. You know, I set foot on the campus at Duke. I love the coach. I love the guys on the team, and you know, it's just really been a place that's, you know, near and dear to my heart. I was also looking at some of the other top academic places like Stanford and Harvard. Those are kind of my three that I was choosing between. But you know, I thought that Duke was just a place that was special to my heart, and I really believe in going with your gut in a lot of things, and that was one of them that I definitely did, and I'm really happy that I did.
So my last question is,
sure.
The other side of you, I look at you like a tennis parent, because you're a former coach, you know a lot about the game at multiple levels, and your wife's a pro tennis player, but you can't coach her yourself. So for me, I'm thinking like that would be a nightmare of a job, right? To have to coach this dude's wife, and he used to be a coach on tour, coach USTA, et cetera, et cetera. Name the top 5 coaches you know on tour right now. And they can even be men's coaches. They don't even have to be girls coaches. And I knew I was going to go with that one. So top 5 coaches on tour right now, number 1. And number 2, do you choose, when Allie's evaluating a coach, do you weigh in or do you stay out of it?
Well, I mean, look, those are two interesting questions. And yeah, I mean, look, every tennis parent who's listening to this, like, I feel you. Like, I know what you're going through. I can feel the emotions. I can feel all of that because I deal with it on a pretty weekly basis. And you know, I mean, like, I try to give Allie input on her coaches. I think that you know, she's been around for, you know, whatever, 13, 14, 15 years. So she kind of knows what she wants. And over the course of her career, and over the course, if you're a tennis parent listening to this, over the course of your, you know, child's career, you know, you're probably going to need different things at different times. So I think that she's been aware of her own game enough to know kind of like what she needs. And I think that she's been really lucky. She's only had a few coaches, and I feel like they've each been there for the right time that they've had it. Look, I can't comment on who's the best coach or who I feel like is a great coach. I feel like a lot of people are doing a pretty phenomenal job. But like, with that being said, like, I know who I've learned from, and like, they've been from, you know, people of all kind of, you know, of all kind of ages, of all kind of backgrounds. And, you know, I mean, a lot of that has been through my time at the USTA. You know, I do think, like, just off the top of my head, like Jose Aguirre, Kathy Rinaldi, Brad Stein, Jay Berger, Paul Annacone. You know, I mean, I've had amazingly productive and insightful conversations with Lindsay Davenport. You know, And then I feel like each one of Allie's coaches, who I've been lucky enough to kind of get a kind of, more of a under the hood look from, I've really learned a lot from. And like, I think that is the key thing as a tennis parent. So whether it's Tom Gutteridge, who's Allie's current coach, or Billy Heiser or Yves Boulay, who are two of her former coaches, like if you're there trying to really insert yourself in the situation, your player, your child, your wife in this case is only going to know kind of like what you know. And like, I want her to figure out everything that like I don't know. I'm there to kind of give advice to the coach when coach asks me and when they want my advice. And besides that, I'm just trying to, hopefully be as positive as I can for everyone in the situation. And make sure that kind of, that everything that I can be helpful with is taken care of. And like, as a tennis parent, or as me, like in this case, I think that's just reinforcing what the coach is saying to the player, and kind of trying to not send mixed messages by your actions or by your words when you're not at home, when you're not on court with the player. So, if the coach is saying, hey, look, like you got to work hard and you got to really kind of dedicate yourself to the sport off the court. And then, we're not doing that off the court. And obviously that's not any time that you, the coach, or whoever you're working with is going to be with the player. Like, you need to kind of keep that continuation of the process.
Be on board. Like, because I look at, like, I always tell parents, yo, you're about to drive an hour home, don't undo what I did.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, don't, because you spend an hour or 2 hours with the player, they go home, they got a long ass car ride. Don't undo what I just did, right?
I think, and truly, and I understand where they're coming from, because this is a costly sport. This is a costly sport financially. This is a costly sport time-wise. This is a costly sport emotionally. You want your child to do so well, your wife to do so well. But there is a time and a place where you need to be the parent, the husband, and not kind of get involved. And I think that, the more that I learn, the less I try to be involved, because, it's something that I would never want my role to be anything different than family.
Yeah. Well, brother, I appreciate you taking so much time with us. This was a really interesting discussion on so many levels.
Very enjoyable.
And I see you after a match. I give you that look, you give me that look, and I know exactly what you're thinking, and you know exactly how I'm feeling, right? And you have the luxury of being at the laptop and not having to give the post-match speech. So so it's all good, man. I want to thank you. I want to wish you a lot of success, and keep moving the game forward. And I appreciate your time.
You as well. Thanks for the opportunity to come on, and appreciate you letting me talk with you about all this stuff.
All right, guys. This has been a tennis.com podcast with Stephen Amritraj, executive at Universal Tennis, and I got to give you my John Lloyd Chris everything, and husband of Alison Riske.
I'll take that as a second. Appreciate that.
Thank you, brother.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you soon.
Peace.